What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got another NBA 2020 draft video to be going over with you guys. This time I'm actually going to be talking about who I think the Charlotte Hornets should actually be selecting at pick number 3 in the 2020 NBA draft. So this is a very, very interesting one for the Hornets, as I don't necessarily know what's kind of going on with their roster at the moment. Like, they're trying the Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier, kind of backcourt where they're both playing 2 point guards in there. Similar to, the Cleveland Cavaliers and kind of Portland Trailblazers with the height similarities. It's going to be a very, very interesting thing to kind of see how this works, but of course we do know they do desperately need a center. I mean, Cody Zeller and Biyombo aren't just going to be the future of the Charlotte Hornets center rotation. They also do need a shooting guard, in my opinion, as I don't necessarily know how Rozier and Graham can work, especially considering they don't exactly have really too many tall backup guards to kind of come on if the defense isn't working out exactly too great. I mean their backup shooting guard is like, Malik Monk as well, who's about the same height as a point guard, so they probably have the smallest guards in the NBA right now, I would probably have to say. So I think their main priority should be to come out of this draft with a shooting guard and with a center if they possibly could, or just one of them, and then go out and try and sign the other. So the player who I potentially think that I'm going to be starting off with at pick 3 so far is actually kind of the shooting guard one, and that's actually Lamelo Ball. Now, I don't necessarily know if he should be their number 1 prospect, but I'm going to be going over him first, as I think he's the best player out of them all that I'm going to be talking about today, as I definitely think Lamelo Ball will 100% be on the board by the time pick number 3 does come around, I would think, as I think the Timberwolves are most likely going to be taking Anthony Edwards at 1, and the Golden State Warriors are either going to be trading down from that second pick or taking Onyeka Okongwu or James Wiseman. Now, I think is going to be pretty interesting is, yes, Lamelo Ball, I think he kind of works actually pretty decent with Terry Rozier and Graham, because yes, they're not exactly the most off-ball guards. Like, they both do work pretty well with the ball in their hands. They just can play a little bit of off-ball here and there. So I think if they're looking to start Graham as their future point guard, then bringing in Lamelo Ball would actually not be the worst idea, because Lamelo Ball can definitely guard that shooting guard position. Look, he's going to be very raw in his first season or so, but he will definitely be able to develop into a player that can guard that shooting guard position. And not just that as well, is I think he could definitely be a very good player for them, but only if he's got the ball in his hands. If he doesn't have the ball in his hands, then he's not exactly that great. He's definitely not an off-ball point guard or an off-ball guard. He definitely needs to have the ball in his hands, and this was proven very much with the Illawarra Hawks, especially when Aaron Brooks was the main point guard on the floor and Lamelo had to play that shooting guard position. It just didn't work out at all, and as soon as Brooks went down with an injury, Lamelo just went off with the Hawks and was playing pretty insane with them. So I think it's going to be, I don't think Lamelo Ball should really be their number 1 option, but I definitely feel like he is an option to maybe potentially go with. Now, who I think should be their main 2 players that they should be looking at, and this is if these players are both on the board potentially, is James Wiseman or Onyeka Okongwu. Now, I'll start off with James Wiseman first, because I believe if the Warriors are going to keep their pick, they're going to take Wiseman at pick number 2. I think it would be very interesting for them to potentially take Wiseman, as he can now start at center, and he would be their center for the future, and that just makes the most amount of sense to me for them to potentially go out and draft. And of course, that would be a really nice young core. I mean, Graham, yes, he's like 26, so he's not exactly young, but they also have Bridges, Washington, who are, in their, going towards their mid-20s. I believe Washington's like 23 to 24, and Bridges is going to be like 22 or something like that. So, again, they're still very, very young. And then you can bring in a 20-year-old or 19-year-old in James Wiseman to play center. I think it would be a very, very interesting option by them to potentially go forward with. Now, when we go to Onyeka Okongwu, that's a more risky one, because I believe Onyeka Okongwu is not top 5 worthy. I think Onyeka Okongwu kind of falls within that top 5 to pick 9 type of range. And I think he's definitely got an identity kind of crisis where he is kind of a mix between a power forward and a center. Just based on the fact that he's kind of got like that Bam Adebayo and Tristan Thompson hybrid type of player, but he can sometimes work very efficiently when he does play at that power forward. But honestly, I believe at 6'9", even though he's a little bit potentially undersized like Bam and Tristan Thompson are, he does have the potential, and I think his foreseeable future will be played at that center position. But as I said, I feel like he's a pick 5 to 9 type of player. So I don't really think the Hornets should be really taking him at 3. I feel like that's probably a huge, kind of reach. And if they wanted to take on Yeko Kongu, then I think they should most likely be looking to try and trade down in the draft. And there's going to be heaps of teams that are going to want to trade up in the draft. I mean, the Detroit Pistons have already expressed how it looks like they want to actually trade up in the draft to actually go ahead and potentially draft Lamelo Ball. So there are heaps of teams that will look to try and trade up. So if they want a Kongu, then I suggest it might be the right idea to kind of trade down. Now, the pick that I think would be the safest for them, because I feel like he's going to be the player that's going to be on the board at this time. And look, he's not necessarily what they need, but he does come relatively close to it. And that's Obi Toppin. Now, I think Obi Toppin would actually be a very interesting player to put on the Charlotte Hornets, just based on the fact that their forward depth is not exactly that great at all. Like, they've got Miles Bridges, who is 22, who plays small forward. He gets 30 minutes a game, averages 13 points. You got PJ Washington, a power forward, who's actually 22. I thought he was like 24. So yeah, he's relatively young as well. In his rookie season, on 12 points per game. But then other than that, they've got like no forwards at all. I mean, I believe they've been playing Hernan Gomez a little bit at that backup power forward position. Jalen McDaniels only played 16 games, but that's been kind of at the, backup power forward position as well. And I think their backup small forward is actually like Caleb Martin or something like that, or maybe it's Dwayne Bacon. I really don't even know who their backup small forward is, but they really do need a forward. And I think that Obi Toppin could actually be a very interesting player for them, as I think he could actually start, and then Washington could come off the bench and play the backup forward position, as he can play, a bit of small forward and power forward, and really so can Toppin. Yes, Toppin's not the greatest defender, but he can still play at least a little bit of small forward as well. So I think he would be a very, very interesting player for the Hornets to go with, just based on the fact that their forward depth is really bad. As I was saying, Bridges and Washington are pretty good, but I really struggle to look at their backups and think, who's their backup, forwards? It does really confuse me. Like, I think it was actually Marvin Williams as well was their backup power forward. I mean, he played about 20 minutes per game for them. So I think that was their backup power forward. They no longer have him. And they also know, you can't really say, Dwayne Bacon is going to be the foreseeable backup forward as well. I just don't think that makes a lot of sense to me as well. And if it's Caleb Martin or Jalen McDaniels, I think McDaniels is, he's still young, 22 years of age. Martin is 24. I believe he's their backup small forward as well. I just don't necessarily know how I feel about them, and I feel like they do need to kind of draft a forward. And yeah, I do think that Obi Toppin would actually be a pretty interesting one for them to go out and draft, considering they do have a couple of the older players like Graham, who is 25. He's not actually 26. He'll be turning 26 in February. Rozier is 26. Miles Bridges is 22. Washington's 22. Malik Monk is 22. Jalen McDaniels is 22. So they still have a relatively young team, but it's not like any of their young players are aged between 19 to 21. These players are starting to, enter the later years of their young career to the, to kind of in their prime type of years, especially with Rozier and Graham. So I think that's why Obi Toppin would actually kind of fit perfectly as well, is because he's not extremely young. He's about 22 years of age as well. So by the time he gets to about 25, so will the other young players on the Charlotte Hornets. So yeah, they can all potentially come into their prime together. And as I was saying, he kind of fits that forward type of mold. But then I think they desperately need to go out and get a defensive center. Because Obi Toppin, you definitely need to have a very good defensive center, I would think, to kind of fit with him. So what center that would potentially be, I think if you're going to go out and get Toppin, I think an interesting center would be Andre Drummond, because he's currently on the Cavs right now. They didn't really play him much. I believe he was playing like 24 minutes a game, and he had a couple of injuries. I think we've heard that they're interested in him before, and he's a great defender. And he's about 26 years of age as well, which fits into the Graham and Rozier age bracket. So I think he would actually be a very interesting player. But the Cavs aren't going to trade him up easily, I wouldn't think. So yeah, I think they would actually maybe have to trade up, you know, maybe a second round pick and some other player as well to try and get him off the Cavs. Because yeah, his value isn't that high, but I don't think the Cavs are really going to trade him, you know, for really nothing at all either. I think they're going to want to give him a chance in the Cavs uniform. But anyway, to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for the latest NBA content and NBA news. But also don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/long channels. Links for them will all be in the description down below. And also don't forget to check out my podcast as well if you haven't already. Links for that will also be in the description down below. And just don't forget to comment in the comment section, who do you guys think the Charlotte Hornets should be drafting in the 2020 NBA draft? Should they draft Obi Toppin, or should they actually look to try and draft another player? Again, I'd definitely really like to know your thoughts and opinions on this all down below. But also don't forget to subscribe, you know, as I said, to the channel just for all the latest NBA content and sports related content. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.